Log cutting of the right. Right.
Well, that's what was great part about she had legs. And but she had been letting herself be led around. So I didn't know whether or not she was but apparently she was still when they got loose. What's the problem? Yeah. Oh, oh, we didn't get that far because I didn't even I talked to her and she doesn't. Oh, yeah. I told him, well, how you doing? And I wondered if you wanted to talk voice game and can't wait. I was like, honestly, why y'all gotta do this? I mean, it wasn't bad, but like, I want to let it like that. I'm like, we get talk about three things that's all. No, because see, that was it. I was like, I talked to him. And I told him about before, like I talked about it. And he told me that he was right there upset about how he had this in the back. But you know they don't get it. And like especially when you're so obvious by I mean and was out at here's an assignment. I mean, like today when I was on the show, we talk about this. I met some people who we ended up talking with them on the truck just a week about that. Girl was Lotus. And he was telling me beforehand, he was like, yeah, I've been here for, I see you and I realized I have to call phone. He said, I said, you ain't calling home yet. You don't get it? So don't mention my name because I don't need that number. I don't need that number. That I saw you before. I don't need that number. Thank you. So, I need that number. Don't mention my name. Because you go for me. I was like, no good, not enough. So, so long as you take this fine. I don't even know three times. So it's not like you don't know that. No, not. They got very weird. I called him 3 times and nothing at all. I texted him. It's not much different. Or he's nowhere near his phone. And it's going to put his phone down. He's ignoring you. Everybody can see. Yes. Like, what are the words there yesterday? Once I gave him a phone, yeah, whatever. Yeah, one of them. Yeah, she was no, wait, no, wait, wait. Fine. Where are you? So what would have been tonight? Yes, it's Thursday. Did you talk to these people? Oh, yes. All right. I will tell them. No, I don't know. I don't think any of them are coming. Alrighty. We will sort you out. Yeah, that's what I knew you were with them yesterday. Alrighty. Well, we got this one. We don't know. Yes! Oh, yes, yes. We had a food going back and make it something. Alright, we gotta get started. Alright, bye. Yes. I'm not gonna say that's not right. But I'm gonna say this week I'm like, what do you see? I'm like, I've been I came home tomorrow Friday already. And it felt like it was going real slow. And then it just felt tomorrow's another day for me. I'm gonna be in the car. But I'm gonna try to get Mississippi. I wanted to, girl, you know, in my wildest dreams, I was going back and forth Mississippi. But that's another reason why I said, I've done it. And I'm mad about it. I'm mad and it's only an hour. So, six. So, five, home by five, so I can get up at 4:30. So the address is there. It says church on the picture. So I'm trying to find a person that. Oh yes. Okay. All right. Well, we got a good in the South. So we go to the local. It was yesterday. It was yesterday. Yeah. And he got home. So she did. She actually.
Yeah, no, you good. I'm not gonna be able to. That's my biggest thing. This thing heavy, bro. Oh, this is a laptop.
Yeah. So Charles Lamont is in Bastrop. He got confused about what day of the week it was. That's okay. I didn't call him. I didn't call him. Oh well.
You're good.
All right.
Thank you. We appreciate anybody talking to us.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime. So where are they gonna be at? Who are you?
Hello, everybody. Apple.
Amen.
Apple. Apple. How y'all doing? Oh, that's right. All right. As we say here in the world, it's like mine. Good. All right. Everybody. Good. Y'all represent Fall well? Someone, I'm sorry, I'm a little lackluster. Y'all represent for you out there? Yeah. Okay, good. Because your mama don't want to know where did the money go. Anybody wants, right? And I am so excited to be able to present this amazing discussion today with you. I am a fire line Ecclesiastes, and I am here with the incomparable.
Greetings, my name is Simone English.
And so Simone and I, along with Angelica Morris of House of NOLA, have been working with the Katrina Swing Committee, with the advocacy and electives. I'm going to call us consciousness of the group. So bring this conversation, because while we are honoring everything that our folks went through with Katrina and looking at our recovery, we want to know how to do things a little bit differently, right?
Definitely, we want to know how we can do it better next time.
Because we are clear that there will be a next time, right? And we want things to go a whole lot differently for our people we love, and our city itself as a whole. And so I'm very grateful that you joined us for this conversation. So, do you have any words of wisdom that you want to guide us as we carry this out?
Well, always to be sweet with each other, we want to understand, we want to leave this space with something that we can grow. Community. We only have each other, right? And we have to make sure we take care of each other, take care of our community. And so, I'm talking about resilience, but we're forced now to be resilient, especially in this weather that we're facing. And so I thank you all for coming, and we hope that we will be here with you at
like to call up to the mic a person who knows how to take care of our community very well. A person who calls for accountability wherever she goes. They tell you they quake when they see her coming. You're down in your game, like, oh, come on, you know what I'm saying? So please welcome Angelica Morris to the mic. All carrying on their backs the stalwart work of making sure that there is housing for all, and all means all in our community. So thank you, Katrina. Thank you to her team. Thank you, Asali and Simone. The Advocacy and Elections Committee offered this to the Katrina planning team. This research and this process that we're going to go through tonight. So I'm so grateful for Asali's leadership and partnership. All of you have been participating in the last few days. So much of this has come from the hearts and minds of our culture bearers. So much of this desire to put forward our stories in a way where we show how much power we have. And Asali and the folks at Ashe have been leading on that piece of the conversation. How we can tell stories without being taken advantage of. How we can stand in our own power. And so this is always a question, like, where did the money go? How much money did we get? And so tonight, we're gonna go through a presentation. I'm gonna give you guys kind of the order of things. So those of you who are at the tables, sit there for now, enjoy yourselves, your food, but we're gonna invite everybody to come be in a circle after we hear the presentation, after we hear the data, and we're gonna talk to each other. We have policy experts who are here to help facilitate the conversation. We're gonna talk through where the money went. We're also gonna talk about what we need to do next time, right? Because things are very different now. 20 years after Katrina, billions of dollars have been spent just in Louisiana. And it's been our pleasure to offer this in Alabama and in Mississippi, where they have also had these conversations. And this is a little different here because the storm did hit differently here. The impact, the failures of FEMA, the failures at the state level and the city level were felt a little differently here. And one of the challenges is, as we reflect, is that if something happens, when something happens, the fact that I know I'm gonna be looking for Michael Brown to come and educate the current FEMA director because we didn't know how good we had it apparently. Now we have a FEMA director who did not know before taking the job that there was a hurricane season. Brownie, can you come do a heck of a job? Now we do still have some of our heroes, like General Russell Honore, who is still here on the ground, but he's a little older now, he's retired. I don't know if we're gonna get him back out there again to yell at the National Guardsmen if they are turned on us the way they have been turned on other citizens. Are we ready for this? And can we get ready for this reality? Not any panicky, right? I'm not trying to scare anybody. Anybody who knows me knows, like, I want people to be informed and educated so we can act. So the information is going to be here. We're going to talk about the numbers. Your mind's going to be blown. You're going to get upset. This is the place and space for that. And then we're going to talk about how we look at what's left undone, so that we can get ready for the next time. And there are some really obvious inflection points that are coming sooner rather than later. Who knows what's going to be happening on October 11th here in New Orleans? Does everybody know their elections? That the mayor, city council, sheriff, assessor, clerk of court, these are all jobs where there are people who can help prepare not just you as individuals, but can prepare this city to be resilient, to be the resilient hub that we need it to be. We deliberately and intentionally, this is one of the things the Advocacy and Elected Committee made sure we wanted to offer. We didn't want them coming here to make stump speeches. Not even our favorites. We wanted you to walk out of here with your list of demands for them out on the campaign trail. Right? you are gonna challenge them after this and say, this is what we need from you, this is where the money went, and I understand that the job you are running for has responsibility over this, so the next time, it doesn't go astray. You don't want them saying, well, you know, it's the federal government, and it's the state. What can they do? So you can be armed and dangerous in a way that these folks just aren't ready for, because this election is crucial. I wish I was being hyperbolic. I'm not. We will look back on this election and go, damn it, we did it. Or we're gonna look back and say, oh shit, we fucked it up. It's just that stark, it's just that brutal, but it's just that opportunity, it's just that chance. You all are so powerful. You're so powerful in this moment, and we have people here who can help inform and advise you, so when you walk out of here, you are actually going in the right direction. You're leading in the right direction. We're gonna give you the tools to take back to your community, and as also, I don't know if everybody knows this, does everybody know that the K-20 Youth Action is not the end? This is the beginning. We are gonna, the advocacy and elected community will be continuing to host and facilitate these kinds of conversations, even after the elections, because it's not just about the elections. The partners here will be sharing this information, will be making this available. This is your information after all. And we will come anywhere you want to talk you through it. You're gonna walk out of here with your own booklets. You're gonna ask our data analyst as many questions as you want as she walks us through the data, so you understand this. And then we're gonna talk about how we put this data to work. So I wanna turn things over to our data guru, Alex Miller, who's been working with us at Housing NOLA for a number of years on doing this exact kind of work.
Thank you so much, Katrina, for giving me the opportunity to work with you on this. This is a really important event, and I was honored to be the where the money went portion of the event. So I'm your data analyst. I work with Housing NOLA and the Housing First Triad, and I have been going through lots of congressional reports, academic reports, and open data sources to find out how much money did we really get, and where did it go in the aftermath of Katrina and everything. So what we're going to look at here is largely funding received for the entire state of Louisiana. I do have a small breakout for Orleans Parish only at the end, and we were able to separate that out in some cases. But the one lesson that I will say I learned looking through all of this is that the data ain't perfect, right? And it's not easy to find, and it takes a lot of time to actually find out what shook out, right? So we all know that on the ground, it took way too much time to get the money out the door. The same thing happens to actually, finding out what actually happened with it, because we probably didn't know until 50 years later where all the money was allocated and gone because it had not been spent. Even as of right now, there is still some money, small amount, but some of this money you're using.
And say what small is.
Yes, small is probably millions, certainly in the millions, right? Probably tens of millions. Yes.
City's road program.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, the road program. So we certainly have, yeah, you're right, the FEMA road program is certainly on that. So we have billions of dollars in that, because we have other money that remains unspent to this day. So in total, the state of Louisiana received more than $72 billion in federal funds largely for Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. In some cases, because there are multiple disasters involved in congressional bills, so they'll sort of say, this bill is for all the hurricanes from 2005 and 2008, right? It can be a little hard to disaggregate exactly which hurricane it was for, but in general, because this is Louisiana, we didn't take as much damage from the 2008 hurricanes. This is largely for Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. So of that $72 billion, I'm going to just go through these kind of top four in more detail, because as you can see, those are by far the biggest funders, and those are defense, health and human services, FEMA, so Homeland Security or FEMA, HUD, and the SBA. So defense, FEMA, HUD, and the Small Business Administration. So our biggest funder was FEMA at $31 billion for the state of Louisiana. And of those, we have in general, 14.1 billion, so the largest amount went to states and local governments to rebuild infrastructure, so meaning roads, bridges, buildings, parks. Also in the immediate aftermath to remove debris, and to take protective measures, especially emergency protective measures after the storm. Yeah, your blue tarps, exactly. Other sort of immediate rebuilding efforts to kind of shore up infrastructure systems that were dangerous, immediate utilities to get the electric off in certain places. You also have 5.7 billion, so a smaller amount that went to individuals and households for emergency payments. There's $2,000 that was given to every household that was affected. There was, and was able to successfully apply. Also, temporary housing assistance and rebuilding assistance for your homes. And then we have this kind of general 11.2 billion, which is basically just FEMA being a conduit to other agencies for funding. So while some other agencies got specific funding allocated to them, FEMA also served as a conduit to a variety of other federal agencies and programs, whether that is, and that's some of the other ones that you saw in the previous slide. So say transportation, Homeland Security, other entities that they're just funneling, defense, National Guard, they're funneling resources to some of these other agencies as well. So one of our next biggest funders is HUD. And this is one that those of us who work on housing are very familiar with, because this is where a lot of the money for longer-term housing recovery came from. And so the type of funding that they provided for that resource was community development block grants, so CDBG, and then specifically these are CDBG DR funds. So you'll see that a lot. Just means community development block grants that are specifically for disaster recovery. So of those were awarded over time. And so what we saw was that in the immediate aftermath in February 2006, there was about the majority of those were awarded, then some more in July of 2006 when we realized this wasn't going to be enough. And then in November 2007, they added an additional $3 billion for the road home program specifically, which was dedicated for homeowners. And so most of that money was for so $11.5 billion of that 13.4 was used for housing recovery. And most of this funding, as I said, was the road home program. So you can see way taller than anything else here. And that is specifically for assisting homeowners to close financial gaps to restore their homes. Now, didn't always do that. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And especially didn't do that for Black households for reasons of program design that may or may not have been intentional in the first case, but became evident very quickly and were not corrected at all. Then a much smaller amount went to recovering rentals. That included larger rental properties as well as the small rental program that helped smaller landlords. And then we have much smaller amounts, although still, again, these are all millions of dollars, right? So this is $218 million, which is very small, but it's a pretty large amount of money dedicated to things like blight prevention, other homeownership programs like soft second mortgages, homelessness supports, and other relief programs. So then the remaining $1.9 billion of that CDBG-DR funding from HUD largely went to infrastructure and other community recovery expenses. So we have things like schools and helping schools get back online. We have things like general long-term community recovery, which can cover a lot of different things that can be infrastructure or other buildings, public buildings, things like that. We have ratepayer mitigation, which is kind of a funny term, but basically means help for utility customers. So if you have an electric bill, that went to help some of those with utilities, and you do not have to pay the entire kind of cost of restoration. We also had some that just went to local governments to help them recover, and we have about $74 billion other dollars that were just for administration. All right, so that takes care of HUD. The next very large funder is the Department of Defense, which is largely, almost entirely Army Corps. There's a little bit of this that was for the National Guard, although a lot of that came from FEMA, actually. Most of this was for levee and infrastructure upgrades, largely which happened in the New Orleans region after the storm. So we had this thing called the HSDRS, the HSDRS, very fun acronym, the Hurricane and Storm Damage Risk Reduction System, which basically means new levees, new flood walls, new protection systems that are supposed to do a lot better, and supposed to protect us a lot better than obviously what was there before. before Katrina that did not protect us adequately. And so that was about 14.6 billion of that 15.7 billion in total that the Department of Defense spent. And then our last big funder was the Small Business Administration, and they largely provide loans. So unlike all the other grants, all the other funding you're seeing here is grants, this is loan dollars largely. So they provided $7.1 billion in loans to individuals, homeowners, and businesses. And those are largely loans that were used to, in general, restore and repair homes and businesses. So the largest amount went to home loans. So helping folks, take out loans to actually repair their homes in a more immediate sense, maybe than you were seeing some of the other road home dollars that other things come out, where supplementing those. You also see $1.4 billion in business loans. So businesses using those, and these are largely for physical repairs. And then this much smaller number, the 0.1 billion, which again is don't very much number, is economic injury disaster loans, which were more for operating. So for businesses that needed money to pay those staff or get that revenue. So what do we think, what portion of this went to New Orleans? Like I said, that can sometimes be a little hard to determine just because not all of this is split out by county or parish in the data. But what we do know is that New Orleans got about $7 billion in public assistance funding from FEMA. So that's infrastructure, debris removal, safety improvements, roads. And then we got about $4.3 billion of this CDBG funding, and that's for road homes specifically. So we got some more from other uses, but the largest portion of it was for road home. And we got about $2.9 billion in individual and household assistance for FEMA. So again, it was immediate aftermath payments for finding new housing, renting new housing, being able to do immediate repairs to your home, and those are $2,000 last payments. The SBA loans, really difficult to divide out, but largely I would guess a significant portion of those went to the New Orleans region in general. And then about $14.6 billion, so that Army Corps funding that went to that regional infrastructure improvement project is Orleans, and then also the 4 other regional parishes that benefited from that system. So Jefferson, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, and St. John's. So that is about what we know about where the money went, at least at a higher level. You do have a handout that kind of breaks it out in more detail, which is your white handout. So if there's any one of those pieces you're curious about, happy to answer questions or go over any of these pieces.
Does everybody have the white handout?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody has.
All right, so that's where the money went.
So we asked Alice to be quick,
Yes.
but let's take a breath. And let's ask some questions before we start talking. So, for everybody.
It's a lot of data, I'll say. So I'm happy to, I'll be around.
Right.
Your questions as you think about it.
You're not here.
Oh, let's see. I mean, I think you can, so there are entire long list of projects. I would say there's the typical project is, for some of these funding sources is going to be, say, there's an infrastructure projects. So those are, even years later, we are burying enormous pipes under roads in New Orleans to better control the flow of stormwater. And so you can see that all the streets, when we go around, we see all the streets are ripped up, especially some of our major, large streets like Claiborne. And you can see they've got these stacks of giant pipes, hanging out by the sidelines or near our parks that are being dug up. We're burying those giant pipes to store water better for next year. So those are things we are doing to become more resilient, to better store the water under the roads instead of on our roads or in our homes. We also have typical, say, affordable housing projects. So for a lot of these, you will see, a CDBG investment going into supporting homes for folks who earn less than the median income in New Orleans. And so right across the street, we have the Muses as an example of a project that was built and supported, I think, with some of this funding that is a mixed income development that houses both folks paying market rate and people paying less than market rate for their apartments. And then we have homes, right? So a typical road home homeowner who received funding. And actually, I'll take that back, because there isn't a typical road home homeowner, because there are typical white homeowners and typical Black homeowners, and they had a very different experience with road home in a lot of cases. And so we see that white homeowners tended to get more funded because the way that road home assistance was calculated was through pre-storm value or damage that your house. It was the lesser of whichever of those two that they said the lower amount, whichever of those two. And so because Black homeowners are more likely to live in areas where homes were valued lower due to systemic racism, we saw that Black homeowners were more likely to get assessed on pre-storm value and therefore not get the full amount they need to cover the actual damage to their homes, whereas white homeowners more often got the damage of something. And so there was really no typical experience because it really differed by neighborhood and by who you were for that program. And one of the things we absolutely have to do better next. Yes.
Okay, who decided how the money was spent?
That is a great question.
NOLA.
Yeah.
Have you joined us?
Yeah. Yeah, I think somebody else is better qualified to answer this question than me.
So, we are really pleased to have with us tonight Lona Hankins, who is the CEO of the Regional Transit Authority, our transit services here. But before that, Lona was chief cook and bottle washer of our rebuilding program for our Orleans Parish school systems. She was working with the
Hey, so my name is Lona Edwards Hankins, and in 2007, I joined the state working for the Emory, the Recovery School District. On behalf of my community here in New Orleans, to help rebuild the public school infrastructure. My degree is in mechanical engineering, and I had spent roughly 20 years at a refinery in Plaquemines Parish in the private sector, and had a shut-up moment when we came in, survived this. So to answer your question specifically, right? So the process for getting the money from FEMA was a fight every year. We would have meetings and they requested, it's up to the applicant, from FEMA's perspective, it's up to the applicant to approve storm damage, right? And so for an instance like the school district, they did not have a robust school construction program prior to Katrina, and probably just had a maintenance program maintaining the buildings, right? They got caught flat-footed. And so we were now faced with fighting not only FEMA, but also the state, NOLA, improving storm damage. And in our system, we had an excess capacity. We had more buildings than we had children. We had buildings that were built for Black children and white children, that you can tell by the architecture. And the ones that were most damaged were in Black neighborhoods, right? So every day, it was a meeting about a building and how much flood water got into the building, whether or not there was deferred maintenance, which both records got damaged. So it's just this back and forth conversation, literally from the time I walked in, and it had been happening before I got here. So I walked in 2007, and it wasn't until President Barack Obama got elected in 2009 that I went to a meeting and said, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this quagmire, right? Senator Landrieu had passed some legislation that said any educational institute can just declare their amount of damage and people was required to just give it to us. But you still had to prove it in code and policy, things like what was your building standard? Well, New Orleans had to build a building in, I think the last building they built was like the late 80s, early 90s, and because they were doing one-by-one buildings, they didn't have a true standard. So we didn't have that documentation. The capacity of a building, so it's places like LA where they're over capacity. One of the things FEMA learned from the disasters, like the earthquake, was they may be 1,300 students sitting in a building built for 400 students. Well, they didn't want to give LA enough money for 1,300 students, I'm only gonna give you for 400 students. In Orleans, I threatened to use particularly part of our campus that was originally designed for Black children. Originally, the plan was to put 11,000 Black children there to bus them instead of integrating. But that campus was built for about 4,000 students. But at the time Katrina was hit, it was only 1,000 student enrollment. So if it was over 50%, you owe me 4 buildings. They said, wait, that ain't gonna work. So we worked through a process where, and part of the thing, and that really has been concerned about, so I'm rambling, sorry. Part of the things that has been concerned about some of this reform that FEMA's proposing is they're proposing to public assistant applicants that a cost estimator creates the basis of the project worksheet, which is the dollar value you get for the grant, as opposed to the actual cost, right? That may work on a one-off, but a storm like Katrina, where I begin to compete against myself, because now I gotta build 5 schools at a time, and if everybody is building, your construction costs are gonna go up. And we saw that after Katrina, we put, we were being told, oh, it's $150 a square foot. We put 5 bids out, and the bids started coming back at $200 a square foot, right? After they started building the hospital 3 or 4 years later, and we were still building, we saw bids at $300 a square foot, whereas we only got, $150 a square foot, right? So it's some of those, it's in the nuance. The other thing that concerns me, and things we should be thinking about as a community, and y'all have to forgive me because I got my engineer hat on, not my community hat, right? At some point, the community needs to come together while it's dry outside and have a plan on how we're going to rebuild. Because it is way too emotional after the event, right? And again, I got my engineer hat on, not my people hat, right? Had we looked at the population shrinkage in New Orleans, and probably, this green dot conversation that happened from an engineering planner perspective, right? It may have made sense to incentivize people to come back into the city where the blight was, as opposed to rebuilding where they were that flooded. Even if it just flooded, like Broadmoor, y'all, flooded in 1978 and has flooded just about every year of my adult life, every time there was a bad rainstorm. So perhaps, look, Broadmoor, we should think about what mitigation looks like today, right? And maybe residents can move to Central City where it didn't, and rebuild there, right? I know, I apologize, this is my engineer hat, not my people hat. The other thing is, as we think about standards and codes, right? At the time Katrina hit, we didn't have the International Building Code adopted. And FEMA says, I'm only going to pay you for your adopted codes. So today, as we think about the fortified roof, as we think about mitigating our homes, elevating our homes, is that part of the building code, the adopted state building code?
And yes,
Thank you.
yes, we did that part already.
Right? Because that makes the people who come to rebuild, fight with FEMA and go step afterwards, job a whole lot easier.
So I want to stop talking for a second, but I want to circle back to the thing that's going to get you jumped. And I'm not jumping, but
I might jump myself.
But I think this is the tension conversation, right? One of the problems with the Green Dot Plan was it was not done with communities input. But the biggest sin that I attribute to it is is after the hubbub, after everybody justifiably got angry, we didn't go back and plan in a way that connected to what community wanted. We did the UNOT plan, we did the Unified New Orleans plan, we had people come together, but we didn't connect that to action. It wasn't until we launched housing, the housing NOLA process, that we talked about what people wanted and how we could do it. And that was subsequently almost a decade later. We spent a lot of money, we made a lot of investments, but we didn't have overarching strategy because the first time it was done just dispassionately, and it was presented to the community as a fait accompli. And what Lona is talking about is something, we got visitors here, and we got a number of people in the room tonight. We got folks from Omaha and Tulsa and Houston who are getting ready for their own versions of these or have already experienced some kind of climate disaster and also wanting to help us figure our way out of it because we are the canary in the coal mine. We are actually at the 20-year mark, as bleak as this is, as distressing as this is, this community is ready to make some real changes and choices. And we need support to do that. And our friends at Organizing Resilience have a strategy called Blue Sky Plan to do exactly what Lona is talking about, to talk about and have these hard conversations. Because they're going to be hard regardless, but it is impossible to talk about making choices immediately after the disaster when people, especially after what happened with Katrina, right? And we're seeing it now, especially now. Our neighbors are not faring any better. There is too much uncertainty, so we've got to talk about getting ready ahead of that. We've got to get our leaders ready. So what does that look like? Could we have that conversation? We want to have some of that conversation tonight, right? We want to have some of those conversations tonight. We've got experts in the room. We want to pick a subject, drill down on one thing, and talk about what this could look like. What do we need to do to get ready? Is it the schools? Well, this year we can do transit. We don't need to do housing. Because we've been talking about housing all week. We wanted this to be more than just, even though we know it's a building block, and y'all have responded beautifully to supporting the housing conversation so it doesn't get left behind, right? But what else do y'all want to talk about? What else do y'all want to drill down around? Howard?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Dr. Howard. I'm the former Assistant Health Commissioner of the City of Chicago.
And if I got shot, people hear you. Sorry.
Harold Washington. And I'm part of the People's Response Network. 6 weeks ago on July 11th, we commemorated the worst heat wave in U.S. history, where 759 people died in 4 days. So if you haven't seen the movie, Cook Survival by Zip Code, we highly recommend it. We're happy to share with you if you see it on YouTube. So my question for everybody here is a state researcher and organization, with, let's say, the water retaining pipes, so you've been able to map out where they are, how the money's been spent, sewers, infrastructure, whatever. Since that commemoration last 3 or 4 weeks, thousands and thousands of basements of primarily African American Latinos have flooded in Milwaukee and Chicago because of these intense rains that everybody is suffering all over the world. We're part of the largest water reclamation district in the Western Hemisphere. 11 million people under one water reclamation district. It goes all the way up to Wisconsin and down to Indiana. And they refused with the city of Chicago and county code to fix the whole water system for primarily African American Latino neighborhoods that have been redlined for over 100 years. So I guess my question in particular is, have you been able to map this out, and are you considering having done participatory budgeting, which means that people will say to the next city council mayor, this is where to spend the money?
So we haven't mapped it out. And we can do that. So what we want to know what you all think, because that is part of the process that we want to talk about before we go and ask for participatory budgeting. We want to get clear about what our priorities are. We want to talk about the Blue Sky Plan. The process, again, we don't necessarily need to do participatory budgeting. We need to wield our power over our elected officials. They work for us. We have to move to, but if everybody wants to do participatory budgeting, we can. But we have elections right now. We don't need to wait to change how we do budgeting to send them to elect or re-elect them come January without them having some clear instructions. And so, that's, Amika?
I may be using my term here, so please feel free to tell me if I am. But it seems to me that we are talking a lot about recovery, and I understand that this moment requires that we reflect on what recovery might look like, and even what a just recovery might look like. But the thing that I keep paying attention to, that I can't let go, is how we actually try to mitigate the sum of this if we know it's coming.
Yes.
We know that hurricane and weather and water
Real
coming from the top and the bottom at certain times of the year. You know, one of the things I just have not seen our city or state leadership really do is step into preparation. There is no preparation, so when storms come, we just leave. It really is easy, like hoping that we can come back to something and that everybody will be okay. You know, like those of us who can leave and those of us who have to stay, hope that we can live through. And so that to me is something I'm hoping that in addition to the recovery conversation, we can also somehow talk about how we're going to manage litigation.
So that's perfect because that should be clearer. That should be exactly what we're talking about. Recovery is not just putting back what's there. It has to be truly, and I think we got away from the word resilient because it's been attributed to the people. And what Amika is talking about is a resilient community, right? That means you address what happened, and then we talk about how we prepare so that, again, this gets to Lona's conversation. Do we talk about relocation? Managed retreat? What is the elevating homes? Because one of the things that happened after Katrina was people were supposed to elevate their homes, and because of issues, there was in the name of getting people back and letting people pull permits. Well, maybe you don't have to elevate your house. Maybe you take the elevation money and spend it on putting a new roof on because you didn't get enough money to actually, you didn't get enough money to fix your house in the first place, much less enough money to truly mitigate. And that's not the homeowner's fault. That's not the property owner's fault. That's how and that's what ends up happening is we go, well, you took the money and you didn't allocate. It's your fault that you're flooding now when it rains, right? Because you didn't flood before, and the new flood, and now you got a new flood map that's telling you you're gonna spend $3,000-4,000 on flood insurance that you can't afford.
So there's a federal requirement also, and part of this, looking at graphic phone, part of this FEMA redesign. So states and local municipalities should have a pre-approved mitigation plan. I don't know what our state mitigation plan looks like. I know the city has a resiliency plan. I'm not sure. I picked up the book to see what it looks like for a mitigation plan. What you're talking about is living with water that folks have been talking about for the last 20 years that I'm not sure anybody has really picked up the ball and moved on. So, yeah.
So how about that? How about let's talk through what it's gonna take to do a city mitigation plan? And what should be in it? All right, is everybody just asleep from the food hall or something?
So I want to say that when we think about prevention, and if we don't want people to go back in certain areas because of the likelihood of being overwhelmed with the water situation, we need to really look at paying people the great value that they have in their homes. That they don't offer me something that is substandard that I will not accept and expect me to take it and move. So we have to be really honest when we offer people. They can offer so that people will feel encouraged that they can relocate somewhere else, relocate somewhere
They
else.
give me choices. So
Yes.
she's about to leave, but I was gonna ask Nicole Barnes to talk about, since the question came up, and I know you're not feeling well. Can you tell really quickly about the Ilden Charles project? Because that speaks to that question.
So, hi everybody. I suffer from migraines and I feel like I'm getting one, so that's why I'm sleeping right now. But that's okay, I'm gonna talk about this because of course it's the work I do every day and I feel very passionately about it. I run a nonprofit called Jericho Road Episcopal Housing Initiative. We build affordable housing, mostly homeownership in Southeast Louisiana. We're working in what we call, well, it's a coastal parish, a Terrebonne parish, which is right on the Gulf of Mexico. And we just finished a project, we're wrapping up at the very end of the project, homes, 19 homes that are built to the fortified gold standard, which is a building standard that the insurance recognized works. And it really mitigates the damage that happens. And so with this project, it costs us significantly more than what we normally pay in for construction costs. I would say significantly, it depends on which, like the windows were significantly more. The roof, it's not much different than what we pay for a regular roof. With that being said, we just finished these 19 homes. And we've been getting insurance quotes on these homes in a coastal parish. And the annual premium cost has come in at like around $1,551 for the year. I don't think we've seen those prices since 1995, definitely pre-Katrina. And so we know that making the investment on the front end can really get us to where we need to be in terms of affordability and, more importantly, in terms of mitigating the risk for families so that once a hurricane happens, you can go back home. We had, while we were actually under construction last year, we had a hurricane to hit. Terrebonne took more of a direct hit on the hurricane. It wasn't a hurricane, it wasn't a 5, but it was a 2. And I can say that we didn't lose a single shingle, no siding, no damage at all. So the proof is in the pudding, the science proves that it works, but we have to have the political will to make the investment.
And Nicole, walk us back a little bit, because I don't think everybody knows about the Ilden Charles community.
Oh, okay, so let me talk about that community. The Ilden Charles community actually is a Native American descendant community that lives on a barrier island right off the coast of Louisiana. That island has suffered from climate change and coastal erosion over the past 50 years. And I'll give you an example of what it looked like maybe about 50 years ago. The island was like this. It might be like this right now, and I think I'm being generous. And so this is one of the largest relocation resettlement projects that has ever been undertaken. HUD funded it. It's going through the state. It's being managed through the state of Louisiana. And it's relocating the island residents to a place in Terrebonne Parish that is farther north away from the coast, and not in a flood zone, and being built to a resiliency standard. But to see, when you're looking at, for average homeowners who didn't have a fortified built home in that area, paying upwards of $13,000 per year for insurance. And I'm not talking about for a big mansion, I'm talking about for a 1,200 square foot house. So you can see the incredible difference the investment that is necessary makes in being able to rebuild your community.
Is there some resistance to that relocation?
Yes, so the state funded it. The state paid for it in its totality.
But there are people who say, I'm never leaving the island. Well, so they won't have a choice one day because the island won't be there. It's almost gone out. So,
Jenny?
I was gonna ask, you mentioned during your presentation that there's money unspent 20 years later. Like, how much is there and how much can go towards some of these, like, hurricane proofing every house in Louisiana?
So
So
I would say that money that is left has been obligated to a specific purpose. So like we mentioned the city roads program, there's about $1 billion or so, billions and some change that was $2 billion obligated. They've drawn down some of that, and it was purely for the roads rehabilitation. When I checked in 2020, I just joined the RTA in a different capacity. I reached out to the state to figure out how much road home money from Katrina Rita was left, to figure out if my agency that didn't receive any disaster-related block grants could be eligible, and they were at the balance. That's minimal amount left of that community CDBG DR from Katrina Rita. And as it relates to FEMA dollars, there's nothing left related. If it hadn't been obligated, we're not getting it. So it was obligated for a specific purpose. Every disaster has some mitigation money associated with it, but as I'm understanding, you have to have an approved mitigation plan in advance of the storm. So today, if a hurricane hit, did Louisiana, did New Orleans have an approved mitigation plan? And then they would peel off a portion of that, those FEMA dollars, some ratio that goes towards mitigation. I don't know what the ratio is, but there's a portion.
And we think the same rules apply to giving the free fall of the federal government.
No, that's changing. That's what there's legislation that is changing as we speak around this whole thing of undoing FEMA, right? And giving block grants to the states.
Yeah.
There's current legislation proposed as we're speaking to decouple all of that. And if your state is not strong, it'll be your challenge. And what they're saying is, we're not concerned as much about fraud, we will audit afterwards. So they're claiming they're trying to unleash the handcuffs that you had to go through to get you the money sooner. But they're really just feels like they're transferring that responsibility to the state. And if your state, if you're Louisiana and dealing in New Orleans, I don't think the conditions have changed much today versus when we were in 2007, because I felt like at the table, I didn't know who was on my side, if FEMA was on my side or GOSEP was on my side, and who was here to help. Because there were days where FEMA would look at GOSEP and say, why are y'all giving the school system such a hard time?
All right. So this is a lot, right? You want to follow up on your earlier question? You want to follow up? You asked when we talked about the Jean Charles, you had a follow-up. You sure? So can we dig down on that relocation? Because I think that's an important question. Does anybody else have any questions, concerns about that? So just so y'all know, that was not a part of the recovery process. There was a competition sponsored by the Obama administration, the National Disaster Recovery Competition. And they invited people across the country, states across the country, resilience. Yeah, that's right. They invited them to make applications. Louisiana got 2 of those grants. One here in New Orleans for the Gentilly Resilience District, which is still not finished and is on pause. And the second one was the Jean Charles relocation. So this was money, and again, I want everybody to kind of sit and think for a moment that the incredible faith offered by Native American tribes to negotiate with the United States of America and the state of Louisiana for one more relocation. Now we have our trials and tribulations with this country, but the indigenous population has discussed some particularly problematic iniquities, including relocation, including forced relocation. Everybody learned about the Trail of Tears in school, right? Yeah. As we celebrate Andrew Jackson. And so that the issue was serious enough. The state of Louisiana, and this is what I'm talking about, how we can lead, that the state of Louisiana negotiated with a tribe of Native Americans who were at risk of being displaced through no fault of their own. Their home, the place that they finally settled on, and they've been there for a very long time, was disappearing underneath them because of climate change. And the state of Louisiana showed up, went after money, after engaging with them, and said, let's move you, and found the developer. And they're not the first one, they found Jericho to do what they've done now, because they got some houses out there that are not quite as sturdy. But they still did it, they still took that leap of faith, and they're still working in good faith to get it fixed. This is not impossible. That's a movie that people will go, I don't watch it, it's too stupid, that's too unrealistic. Why would Native Americans trust the state of Louisiana to do anything? But, and it's not just about trust, it's about standing in your own power. So can we do that? Are we, and I know we're ready to do that, but what else do we, and that might be a better question, what else do y'all need to start this conversation? We thought the data would be enough.
Let me ask you a question. Have we solved the individual assistance, so the rebuilding for people based on cost to build versus value?
No, but when you say so, that was a decision made by the governor and her team when they designed the program, and part of that was done at the urging of the Bush administration. So what needs to happen is when we talk about the appropriations from a congressional level, they've got to come with better guardrails. We've got to have, and I think this is also part of the plan, putting together a rebuilding plan. And we've got a lot of those numbers already. We've got the numbers that we need, we know what those are. We put things in place like the code, for example.
So I'm wondering if in whatever mitigation plan that we are designing, we implicitly say it is a cost to build.
That is possible.
Not the value of my home. And we create a baseline that a 3-bedroom, this is the quality that you get, a 3-bedroom uptown versus a 3-bedroom in Central City, right? And homeowners, they can choose if they want to pay for blue sky, whatever, the sunroof. If there's something that we can say everybody deserves this, and that is the cost of the building.
That makes sense to me.
Exactly. We put it in mitigation. Barbara.
I'm hearing a lot of different perspectives on what needs to be done, but my background is architecture, building, construction, and design. I'm mechanical, engineer. Why would Louisiana, even New Orleans, want to build back in an area that's below sea level?
Because that's the whole city. That's the whole city. You kind of stepped into a real problematic conversation, but unintentional. You just asked the question that people ask, and we got mad at those people 20 years ago. We cursed those people out in the street 20 years ago. And you did it without that kind of intention, because why should New Orleans come back at all? Because you didn't understand that the entire city is below sea level, especially now.
I get what you were saying, and so, first, you're starting out already, and just by where the state is located, right, where you are. However, I like what this sister was saying about your mitigation plan. And I see it as a phased mitigation plan. One would be an emergency. Hurricane happens today, it happens tomorrow. Where are these people going to live? What is the plan? Are you going to send them home to the country again?
That wasn't planned, that just happened.
Well, that's what in your mitigation plan. You would say, we're gonna use these vacant ones you talked about earlier today.
That's right.
And we're going to, get them on higher ground, going to what have you. I think in the meantime, I'm sorry. I think in the meantime, it's going in and building up the land wherever you have homes, and not just saying individual houses put on stilts. It is the entire land area needs to be elevated. And even though you might fortify, as you're saying, a house, are you saying that house A, the people in that house are more important than house C, who couldn't afford to fortify to have? And so it's a big deal. But I think that I would say the mitigation plan needs to be, if this happens tomorrow, this is where our people will go. I don't want to send them out because they may not come back again. They may not come back home.
Now, we know that. We know that. We're still down over 100,000 African Americans who could not make it back. Some of them chose to stay, but a lot of them did not choose. And we lost 26,000 in the last 5 years that we know got pushed out.
There's some advantages, though, to come back and elevate all land areas slowly. You can start putting in the infrastructure that most cities have, where the water actually flows, down and under and out to the river, what have you. And I think that in no time like the present, if you've got folks like FEMA involved, it's time to relook at Louisiana and build it for the future. But to come back and put a house and how fortified it is, that water levels at what, 11, 15 feet, what have you, no one can live in a house like that. You're going to have mold damage, you're going to have what have you. You have a roof, now the shingle flew off, but you still can't live in it. And so that would be my recommendation. Develop a mitigation plan that starts an emergency and then work down, a 3-step thing. And then certainly, for getting your people back, I wouldn't come back unless I knew I was building on a level that was higher. Do not ask me to put 15 steps up to my house, to get in my house. And everyone's gonna have to get around, there's ADA things, there's, handicap accessibility, and,
I mean, some of the coastal parishes that have, like Blackman, these are some of the more rural communities where you're gonna get me out of my community, you're gonna take my house out of my whole dead man. They're elevated on houses on stilts 20 feet. 20 feet, and again, when you're talking to people who have gone through a crisis, what we're trying to talk about is exactly so we can avoid emotional decisions that feel like power, right? Standing and saying no when you are powerless feels like power.
it's
Saying
fear.
it's
fear of sleeping, and we just came, from the shade, and all the photos, and this devastation, this heart-wrenching to see, and how high the water was, and how people were just dying. And after I was sharing some of the people in our group, I was part of a group that came out here in 2006. I was with Little Daily in architecture and engineering. We did an assessment at Cherry Hospital. We told a story, beautiful hospital.
You just like all the red blood issues.
Yeah.
Does somebody give you a cheat? Trigger.
And I was here with my group for a month. And we went through practically every room, assessing it and giving recommendations. And I'm just saddened to see that FEMA didn't do anything, and that hospital still sits abandoned. So I would say,
There we go. FEMA gave folks money. The state chose to do something different with the money.
sounds like, I'm gonna give this up.
Sounds all right. We have Sally, and then Lily, and then that lady right here. And Sally, come on back up.
I was trying to make sure I can.
Yes, ma'am. Getting loud for y'all. So I had, 2 things. One, I want to say, this conversation about, climate migration, is basically what you're talking about, like folks having to move due to climate situations. And one thing that we should know, that when the people of New Orleans have to move, the people of the Gulf Coast are gonna have to move, right? The new Gulf Coast will be up to Memphis. So when you ask why we build New Orleans, because one, it deserves it, but two, it's important to save the country, right? When minorities in engineering, a subset of the Department of Energy, they do their analyses, this country is gonna drastically change. The sea level rise in us is going up to Memphis, it goes the East Coast all the way past Philadelphia, right? So we're gonna be thinking about, the changes in climate to our country. We need to be thinking about it holistically, right? And not just one city or even one region. And when we start thinking about climate migration, a good part of the reason why New Orleans is like that is because we want each other. And we want to be around each other. And when we have to go somewhere else, we want to go together. So one of the things that I want to push for in terms of budgeting is, that migration. Where do we go? How do we go? And it might not all be one place, it might be some places, but there are welcoming places where people don't treat us like refugees, right? Those kinds of things. That's number one. Can we go to Omaha? But the other thing, when you were asking about, you said you thought the data would be enough to kind of get the wheels turning. For me, I'm still not understanding all of the data, right? Because I don't understand why the FBI need money. Right?
Well,
Explain to me some of these line items. Maybe we can go through some of the line items, like the WTF line items, like why the DEA, the FBI, and all these people need money in the wake of a disaster, right? So some of that I think would help. Okay. All right.
Yes.
You still put it right here. Put it right here.
And then we go for you.
I just first of all want to say thank you for the conversation and encourage you in that as you're talking about, a couple things come to mind. First of all, the incredible brilliance as I've been coming into New Orleans, leaders and community residents in meetings like this that have brilliant ideas. And it makes me think about one of the reasons we had to develop a plan in Omaha, partly was because we did see Katrina. And we asked each other the question, if this happened in Omaha through a tornado, or through some other event, would we be prepared? So we went to work, we didn't wait on the city to develop a plan. We actually brought together 800, almost 1,000 residents, and we developed our own plan, and it bubbled up to become a master plan for the rebuilding of our core area. But to that point of, then beyond that, we started to put, and I love the way that you always put numbers to it, even not being afraid of how much is it, what is the investment required to actually achieve this? Because we had to do the same thing, and we did, we put together a 10-year strategy, and we put numbers to it. And it was $1.4 billion over 10 years per year. And people thought, oh, you must have lost your mind. But we started to break down where would it come from. And that's what I'm hearing in the room is with the brilliant minds that you have already on this, building that plan, and even if it has to bubble up for the community, and how do you shepherd that through to what's your point, so the elected officials or candidates are responding to the plan that you all have put together because you have the expertise. And that's kind of where I would throw it out, because it helped us navigate and be able to secure significant funding, because when the money did occur, that we already had our plan in place and it was ready to go, and we were able to secure, not everything, but we were able to secure significant investment that had never happened before.
I love what you said about the people developed the plan and put a price tag on it. When we originally did the school's facilities master plan, we knew it was going to cost more, but folks were afraid to tell the community how much money it was going to cost. So we bought the plan, the strategic master plan for the school, to build every building in A-class status, was going to cost somewhere about $3 billion. The shadow government and the appointed leaders were like, no, we can't tell them how much it's going to cost, right? And so staff was forced to scrub the number to come up with a palatable number, right? We originally had a 6-phase master plan. And so I I'm saying that as a cautionary, I think I don't have my government hat on, I have my citizen hat on, right? We have to be authentic and honest with the community and tell the people how much it's actually gonna cost.
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin. Thank y'all for hosting this. I didn't know I was coming to something like this today, but I'm happy I'm here. And please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about anything I'm saying. So regarding climate migration, if you look at people specifically, insurance keeps coming over my head. And I work on a lot around insurance for homes related to like climate crises and so that's one thing. But specifically, it feels like we're gonna have to communicate to people like, or I would want these city council people to understand like there are certain areas that you're gonna have to prioritize getting out first. Because they're like way more impacted than other areas. And unfortunately, that's the cards we're dealt and we have to deal with them. And so for me, I would want the city council people who are responsible for those particular areas to really understand that that is a serious matter in order to, relocate these people. So like I think about people like in my ward specifically right there. And I live in Gentilly in a resilience district. And so I'm hearing a lot about mitigation, climate migration, so I don't know how to form what I'm trying to say, but it also feels like we should maybe be talking about things to like invest in like infrastructure over time as well. I think the state of Louisiana is heavily invested in great infrastructure. But not heavily, but I feel like what we have now is like more great infrastructure, big great infrastructure, so I'll put it like that. And so living in Gentilly, like I can quite literally feel the difference of having great infrastructure investment. So I guess in the process of this whole plan, my concerns and what I think should be prioritized is the most vulnerable people need to be prioritized, not as more important, but like as more tedious and more of an investment to you know what I mean. And then also, how are we investing in mitigation over time across the city in a way that actually is preventative? And I guess the other piece for me is like the insurance, and it's just like it's a huge issue. It's very predatory. It's the reason why a lot of things are belabored like how they are. And so I don't know if I'm communicating all my thoughts appropriately, but yeah, that's what my mind is.
So thank you. So if he could just ask me a question with my eyes. No, but I want to answer it because by coincidence, the Regional Planning Commission shared with me today that they want to be talking about this exact kind of planning, and they actually want to share with community some data that talks exactly what you're talking about the vulnerabilities, where people are, so we can talk about priorities, right? We've got a lot of good data in a lot of different ways, but we need to talk about social vulnerability indexes, so we can talk about who needs to go first. And it's because they are hanging on by the razor edge, not their neighborhood is the sexiest, they had the most political will, they could get people to turn out to meetings, they were louder. These are the folks we're about to lose. And if that can't be enough to prioritize them, then we're not serious about saving the city. Because if you can't say, well, no, before you get to me and I'm struggling, but they're about to get pushed out, they're about to be depopulated, they're about to be displaced, they're about to die. Can we triage? And then talk about what are the recommendations we got and how you get the resources aligned. Because also, one thing that everybody needs to pay attention to ahead of these elections is the fact that we are looking at a massive shortfall in next year's budget. Y'all heard that, right? Mm-hmm. And when I say massive, I mean at least $100 million we're looking at. At least, less than we had for this current year.
You think the state
city. So that's significant. Now again, we're talking about the last year's budget, a few years' budgets have been bolstered by COVID dollars, right? So we had a little extra money. And now that's happening, but also these are the consequences of some of the decisions that our leaders have made. One big issue that's not being talked about, and we need to make it a centerpiece of this election, has been our inability to pay our property taxes. Because we have assessments that are not connected to value. And those chickens have come home to roost, where the city's revenue projections are off significantly because folks can't pay what they don't have. Between insurance and all the other cost of living issues, you got people who literally can't pay their property taxes. A few months ago, not very quietly, but nobody was talking about it, the city issued notices and said, and demanded that property owners who had not paid their property taxes for 23 and 24 come in or they would be referred for tax sale. Typically, we wait until the tax sale comes to demand payment before going to tax sale. Okay? But now we're saying because there's not enough other cash going in, we have to maybe set a deadline. Okay, that was, yeah. Oh, and they get the housing reports, Daisy.
No, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, they need both. They need both. Yep. So make sure they get the housing report. Somebody get.
Thank you, Auntie.
Yes.
Sorry, I believe.
All right, y'all come close, y'all say. So they can access these left over.
Thank you.
So, what do y'all think about that? I think I hear we need more data, and I heard from Sally, we want to dig down around some of this data. We want to understand the decision-making process, so that there might be a good thing the FBI got from our disaster money. But what is it?
So the other thing, you point out the assessment. Not only is that affecting our city, it's affecting our schools, right? That the schools budget, one there is because of the loss of population, there's less students enrolled. I got at the number, it's like 29,000 students enrolled in public schools when we were planning, it was for 45,000. And at the time Katrina hit, it was 65,000.
Right, and that's an important point, because that was a big moment of contention, that when we were building back, it was for significantly less than were here before. Right. And the question we were pushing, I remember these conversations, we were pushing, saying, well, how are we gonna get kids back if we don't have schools for them? And now, we have too much room in a system that 20 years ago, we were aghast at how small it was.
A system that's highly inefficient. But yeah. But the other point that
You took your hat off for real.
I'm surprised that Sally didn't bring up is this issue of if we're going to do mitigation and making our people more resilient, and should be a campaign issue. How do we pay our people?
Yes.
Right? The hotel cost in New Orleans is probably the same as the hotel cost in New York City. Right?
Yep, Chicago.
But yet, the pay of the staff at that hotel is substantially lower. And to me, while our economy is thriving on tourism and our city needs tourism, it is such an extractive issue, and no one is holding those major employers accountable. And
Because we need it. Like, why do we need something that hurts Black people? Why do we need tourists? Who needs? Also, the assessment rate is on the ballot.
And the assessment rate is on the ballot.
I was just being smart from the side, saying, if it's hurting us, why do, but, if it's hurting us, do we need it? I think so much of what we decide we need is because it seems like we should. You know, do we need a $500 million new neighborhood that most of us can't afford to live in? Do we need pilots and, you know, tax abatements for all of these big corporations and none of it comes back to us? Why do we need driving ranges? Two golf driving ranges. Why do we need that? You know, I think that so often we sell ourselves short to attract businesses that don't do anything for us. Yeah, and it's just very informative.
All right.
And also in that vein, we've spent how many millions of dollars to relocate people when the Super Bowl was coming? And we could have invested that
Homeless, what we did
into,
in the house,
yeah, right, into actual house.
So yeah, it's 17 million.
It's a money grab.
It's a money, we worked, NOLA worked with the city of Nashville during COVID. And we got their mayor to spend about $20 million to provide permanent housing for the homeless very quickly. And the way we got them to do that is the mayor agreed to take about $20 million and do front-loaded leases with hundreds of apartments, vacant apartments in Nashville, and making them available to put the homeless in immediately. So they signed 10-year leases with developers, paid them up front, said, not your business who's going in there because you got your money already. If there are problems, let us know. If there are issues, let us know. But we're going to decide who goes in there, and we're going to make sure they're okay and they're not causing any problems. And you don't care if you have their money. We did it in action. And so we had $17 million to blow. We didn't know that. The government found $17 million to blow. We could have done that. We could have done that instead of renting out a tin can on France Road.
And we could have done it for $8 million.
Right, we could have done it for $8 million. We could have done. I mean, there's a number of things that we could have done. And again, some of this is about power, right? Because Jeff Landry was decided to do this for political payback, and also to do a test run for Donald Trump about what we would tolerate in this country, right? So that's what that was about. So again, we got elections coming up. What do we say to those leaders who some of whom said things, but a lot of them couldn't figure out what to do? What we could have done was rescued our brothers and sisters and made sure that they weren't there. We could have gotten them off the street faster ourselves. And especially after a lot of them walked out of, after the blizzard, most of them left. Most of them left of their own accord after the blizzard. But they returned to other places. The former encampment, the state-owned property was boarded up, and they moved to other places inside of New Orleans. But what we've done with Young House is we've had arguments with our council members over the last years. Several of them have offered their solutions, which are making sure we don't feed the homeless, introducing ticketing. And again, this community fought back against that. The people of this city said, no, you lost your minds. We're not doing that. We may not like this. Some of us may be concerned about it in a way that's not necessarily helpful, but we are not going to let you give people tickets. Yeah, they're not dogs. They're not going to go away if you stop feeding them. So, it's 8 o'clock. Folks are packing up. So number one, I want to get some consent here. I think we've got a plan. So everybody seems really geeked about Lauren's plan, and we need it. We need a mitigation strategy. And maybe I'm geeked because I'm a geek, but everybody wants to do that. And we also have a process to get it done. We want to do a deeper dive into this data. So if the advocacy and electeds, and we're going to work with our partners at NOLA 360, the NOLA Empowerment Network. That's the folks who just walked out of here, who supported the NOLA Empowerment Network. We will have a series of meetings over the next few months. We're going to work in concert to get as much of this done before the election as possible. But it doesn't matter who's mayor. Well, it does matter. But as I remind my team, my extraordinary team, they work for us. They work for us. That's the moment that we need to step into. These people work for us. And we need to make them do their jobs. What do you expect? You to do your job. You're literally campaigning for this job. So you want it. So, and you're paying, nobody's doing it for free.
We are having some debates next week.
Yes.
It would be great for you all to come out and ask all these questions to the folks running.
So we got Ms. Deborah's coming to the assessors debate.
Okay. Yeah.
We got to bring her. The assessors debate is next Friday. So we are also going to work to get some fact sheets out ahead of those debates. And we're actually going to be getting our scorecards out after the debates and ahead of the elections. But is everybody game for a series of meetings to up until the election and after the election to dig through these issues? So the next meeting, we're going to dig even more around the data. Alex is going to go back to.
Is there a process underneath it that you would like us to follow, like maybe some questions that we have of y'all, or where we
So,
deeper or something?
yeah, let's talk about that. What should we do? Set up an email that people can send questions to, or y'all even like that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. We have an email actually. That's John's. We can do one really quickly. Everybody registered? Everybody registered? No. Okay. Or left your name, or did you sign in? Yes. Oh, did you sign in? Did you sign in? Okay. So we will get everybody an email. Tomorrow is Friday. Yes.
And Monday's a holiday.
Monday's a holiday. On Tuesday, everybody will get an email with an email where we're going to send you this information electronically. And you're going to get this information electronically again, and then we're going to talk about some of the topics that we said we were going to. And who's taking notes here tonight? Okay. Well, I was looking at like somebody taking notes, right? Okay. So with some of the ideas that you already had, but we're mapping out this process. The next step is an even deeper dive into the data. Y'all want to dig in around this, right? And y'all gonna want food, right? Okay. So I just want people gonna want food, some writing paper, other things, stuff like that. Maybe print it a little bit bigger because really nice people got. Okay. I mean, yeah. It's so many numbers. Well, the big one, that's why we have the big one too. But this is still numbers. Thank y'all. And we're gonna dig around the numbers, and then we're gonna talk about working towards, because they're digging around the numbers, working towards developing the New Orleans mitigation plan. Because we need that.
And we need migration.
So the mitigation and migration plan. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
All right.
Marching on.
All right. So this is the proof. This is the New Orleans mitigation migration proof. Proof. All right. That y'all have sources. And again, y'all are gonna connect with NOLA and ASHE, as well as a regional planning commission. We're gonna do this dance. All right. Thank you all so much.
We're gonna tomorrow night at 7 p.m. and Saturday night at 5 p.m. Our plays we're gonna stream with Katrina monologues will be at the Mahalia Jackson Theater. We'd love to see you guys there. Phenomenal. 7 p.m. on Friday, and I have some flyers. 7 on Friday, 5 on Saturday. It's amazing. Come bring your people. It's heartwarming. It's heart-wrenching. It's joyful. Music from gospel to opera, hip hop to brass. So it is not free, but I have it for you. So we actually did give away half the tickets for free to the community. So we are hopeful that y'all buy it.
All right, thank you all. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you all so much. Okay, yeah.
My question is, thank you. The baseline sort of the mitigation plan is for us to have
side of the city, it's also what needs to get done so that some people, it won't be as bad for them, right? If they're on the razor edge right now, who goes first? And it gets the investment so that their home can actually sustain them. And some of the events that people are getting absolutely rocked over. Like, we still have people who have not recovered from Ida, and that was a shelter-in-place event. I always think about, if he was here tonight, he could talk about her, but I always think about Miss Mary Simpson. A lot of you might remember her as an elderly woman who died in a fire a couple of years ago. Her home was damaged in Hurricane Zeta. And in 2022, she died when we had that harsh winter. Her home was damaged. She got insurance, and she was the victim of contractor fraud. She was staying in the hotel, going back and forth, and she stayed in her home, which she did not have power for. She would padlock herself in for safety. And during one of those harsh cold snaps, the house caught on fire. Her family who were nearby rushed over to hear her screaming as she died, as the firefighters struggled could not get to her and save her in time. That's not when we failed. We failed her because she had insurance, she was a victim of contractor fraud, she had family nearby, she had the wherewithal to go to hotels every now and then when it was bad enough. None of that worked. None of it was enough. And she died in her own home, trying to keep going. We gotta do better than this. That can't happen again. And there are more of her out there. They're quiet. Some of them are coming here tonight. And we gotta find them and prioritize them and stabilize them. Charles?
Does Housing NOLA have any other grants money that people should know about?
Is that the assessors? Oh, thank you. Yes. The assessors, the debate is next Friday. It's going to be at our shade, and y'all should come back for that. But after that, in about 2.5 weeks, we're going to be releasing the final 10-year report card. The 10-year plan is winding down. Spoiler alert, it's still not good. That's why we've been talking about this. But we know we're not done. So while the 10-year implementation plan, as extraordinary as it was, and the mixed results, winding down, we are going to be rolling out Housing for All formally. That will be the driving planning process for housing in New Orleans. We're going to ask for it all. We're going to demand it all. Right now, the numbers are 31 billion, but we're going to be redoing those numbers. It might be more, it might be less.
That doesn't sound like a lot when you see the 72.
Right? Right? We had 72 billion if we had that. If we had drove it, and that's another reason why we're somewhat ready. We've got to get ready in other areas. So this is housing for foundation. We've got to build a just and equitable city. We've got to build a city worthy of you. We've got to build a city so that the next Miss Mary Simpson has somewhere to go. There's a plan for her. And that her family and her loved ones don't have to watch her die, helpless and hopeless. So that's not the note we wanted to end on, but it is where we came. It is how we got there. So I want to thank you all. I appreciate so much in gratitude, particularly for our friends at the Small Center for hosting us tonight. And we're gonna come back together. They may be here, maybe other places. We want to make sure that they have been an amazing community partner over the last 20 years. Tulane University coming into Central City, being here on the ground floor and seeing things pop up and still offering this space for community. And not just offering this space, but also offering information and exhibits and opportunities for learning that have peppered this space. So I'm pleased that we were able to do this here, and I'm grateful and so very grateful to them for their partnership. And I'm grateful to all of you that you came out here. Y'all hung this long. We knew this was exciting information, and I'm so grateful to the speakers tonight. Thank you all very much.